All right. All right. Hey, guys. Ian Waffles here. So today we're going to be talking about. I'm back with, you pronounce it Laviere,
Yes,
right?
I do.
All right. I'm back here with, I keep wanting to say Laviere, and I said that in the old podcast, and I'm like, I don't think that's correct. So I'm back here with my friend Laviere, and we're going to be talking about the Sonic comics again. Specifically, we are wanting to discuss the Freedom Fighters. That'd be, the Sad AM cast, the Archie Sonic cast of Sally, Antoine, Bunny, Nicole, and Rotor. So we're going to be discussing that. If you want to introduce yourself again or anything you want to say before we start.
Okay, so hey guys, my name is Lavia Ray. Like I said in the previous episode, I have been following the franchise for a very long time, and I've actually been reading the comics since about 2011. So and I've also spent a decent amount of time not only analyzing but also putting up essays, actually critiquing not only the comics but the characters as well. So yeah, I have a decent background with them, and I'm here just to try to discuss a little bit more about them today, especially since I've seen a decent amount of discussion about them on Twitter. So I'd like to try to see if we can give it a little bit more of a robust answer about how I feel about them in particular for this, as well as I feel Ian would also like to do that as well.
Oh yeah, and with something with like the Freedom Fighters in the first place, they're obviously a concept. At least now, it seems like they're pretty much dead in terms of Sega wanting to use them. But the reason that they're kind of important to us is that a lot of the old stories that I really care about in the Archie Sonic comics involve them. A lot of people have a lot of fond memories with the Sad AM characters from the TV show. And just in terms of what people really remember from the Archie comics, it's the reboot era. And so they've come along in various forms, and people have a lot of different memories with them. And we just kind of wanted to discuss their general characters, like where they started, and just kind of our interpretations or our thoughts on how they've been interpreted, and kind of could they be used later in the franchise, in like 30 years, whenever all the old people working at Sega leave and we get new people who maybe want to use them. So we'll see. But before we start, I just want to go over the Freedom Fighters as where they started, which would be the Sad AM cartoon, and what was their purpose and what was their role, and then we can kind of go from there in terms of how they've been extrapolated upon. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Also, right. Not gonna lie, I thought you were actually gonna start doing it. You almost sound like you were about to ramp up for a sponsor.
Man, I must have listened to a lot of podcasts then. Just know how it works. So with the Sad AM cast, with the Sad AM show, back then we only had Sonic and Tails. They were only characters who existed. And in terms of the setting of the Sad AM cartoon, you have this idea of Eggman has taken over the planet. The characters are immediately on the defensive. They have to win the day, and they're always fighting at a deficit. Now you have Sonic, who at the time there's not too much characterization for him. I don't think there would really be any other than the games, right? Just that he's kind of cocky.
That and a little bit from Sonic Adventure, the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, because I believe that came out around about the same time.
Yeah, so, I know yeah. I think they carried around the same time. So you'd have a bit of a mischievousness to him, basically. So with that said, obviously, if they were going for this large scale story of trying to fight back against, Dr. Robotnik and all that stuff, then Sonic probably is going to need characters to bounce off of or talk to. And at the time, Tails was normally seen by, it seems like everybody, as like the little brother who didn't really have too much agency. So he was relegated most of the time in the series to being like a little kid, like a little kid. So basically it's just Sonic on his own. Sonic and Robotnik, that's all we really have. So we introduced Sally, Rotor, Antoine, Bunny, and sort of Nicole. She's more expanded upon in the comics, but so for now we don't really need to go over Nicole too much. She's just a little handheld computer. But I just wanted to go over real quick what their function were. So if we go over, we'll go with the least to the most important. So least important would probably be, you might be surprised by this, but I'd say Rotor, and not Antoine.
Because, no, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, because Rotor, the most he ever got was I think he had 2 missions he went on with Sonic. He had an episode which was dedicated to him being like, "Oh, I kind of wish that I could do more action stuff." And then he does save the day, and he's like, "All right, no, that was fun, but I don't really need to do anything any more of that." Now, Rotor, as far as in the story, he kind of fulfills the role of Tails. Would you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, where he's like the mechanic, and so since Tails at the time wasn't really, I guess, known as like the genius kid yet, Rotor just kind of made all the inventions, and they did come in handy. But I think Rotor as a personality didn't really have anything that stood out. His voice actor changed a few times, so it was really hard to get a feel for even like just his general premise. He mostly just liked to make things, and he was generally competent, I would say. But for the most part, I didn't have any strong connection to him. And I kind of never do. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you remember anything about him?
He was the big guy.
Yeah,
pretty well, not physically was anyway.
Yeah. But I know what you mean. Yeah, he's the guy. So Rotor's function was just basically for plot. He in terms of like he gave items to the characters. Then we have Antoine. Antoine is the comic relief / conflict character. He is there to either make you laugh, which I would argue he doesn't, but whatever. That's subjective enough that I don't care to debate it. But his main purpose was to cause conflict. He was a coward. He was basically Sonic's not really rival, but he wanted to date Sally too, and Sonic's insecure enough, I guess, that he would want to fight him about it, or prideful enough. It was fun. Yeah. But you had stuff like that, and then of course you have the fact that he's kind of clumsy and he's very like stupid and vain. So his point was to cause conflict. There were episodes where he like tried to capture Robotnik by himself and took a ring on his own. There were episodes where he got captured. Most of the times he is the one who's freaking out. So then he alerts other SWAT bots or enemies that Sonic can then fight. So Antoine's purpose is mostly just to cause conflict. I'd say that's about it. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Nicole is just the handheld computer. I actually think that she is, even in the cartoon, better than Antoine and Rotor because the kind of the idea with her is even seated, which it'll be expanded way more in the comics, but the idea that she is kind of learning and getting more of a personality. There's kind of some fun stuff with her and Sonic to where he's like doesn't understand her because she just speaks very intelligently and very like matter of fact, and so he kind of has to like almost convince the machine to adapt to him and speak his language, and so she actually kind of grows a bit of her personality. It's not too much, but it's enough there that you're kind of like, all right, she's useful, she's always helpful, and she's actually kind of a person. All right, well, that's kind of cool. But Nicole mostly just worked as like, we need information, you ask Nicole, she'll tell us. All right, now we can actually get to the 2 characters. Well, I would say there's enough to like have more nuance to them. We have Bunny. Bunny is the muscle of the team. So whereas Sonic is the quick hitter, he can take down all these robots. If there's ever like something like Mega Muck where Sonic can get stuck, or Sonic can't like bust a wall, so his momentum is halted. Basically, Bunny can come in and take care of that because she's part robot. And so Bunny's just kind of premise. It's kind of like the Toph character, to where it's this like cute little character who also is like one of the toughest in the teams. And it's just kind of this fun dynamic of like how polite she is, but how much she can mess you up. So, and she has a kind of a motherly role to Tails. And it's just, she fills that role of just being like, kind of like the heart of the group, I would say. I know some people might say that's Sonic or Sally, but I kind of feel like it's her, considering just her demeanor and just how much she seems to uplift everybody when their spirits are down. Don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
That's good enough. I'll follow up later. Let's keep going. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not trying to take too long with this.
Oh, no, go for it.
Yeah. And then finally we have Sally. Now, Sally's role is one, she is the romantic interest for Sonic, just definitively. Not even like teasing about it, like they make out in like the 8th episode. So it's like confirmed they like each other. And so as far as like relationships go, she has a very nice dynamic to where I think Ian Flynn actually said it pretty well, is that she has enough of a wit to her that if Sonic says something like gives a jab at her, she can usually give something back that either he won't understand, or she just, because she's trying to one up him or whatever, and they can kind of just play off of each other, and they can kind of have a nice little banter. And then as far as Sally Edson, she's very kind-hearted, she's very sweet, and whereas Sonic, obviously all the characters are nice people, but Sally just kind of has this politeness about her. She's a princess, but she doesn't kind of hold herself in a way that would make you think that she's looking down on you. She just, she shows up and she speaks very properly and very kind. And so she works very well in terms of balancing out Sonic, in the sense that Sonic is the one who is going to go everywhere, but she gives direction and aim, and she is the one who is tied to the world building the most, where Sonic is tied mostly to Eggman. Sally is mostly tied to the world and what we're actually fighting for in the first place, and all of the responsibility that comes with. So it's kind of this balancing act of where Sonic is allowed to kind of just be Sonic and do whatever he wants, and he doesn't have to get bogged down by the plot stuff, other than anything maybe like related to him, like Uncle Chuck or something like that. Whereas Sally, she deals more with the day-to-day minutia, and kind of, as Eggman says in the comics, if Sonic is the weapon of mass destruction, Sally aims him. So that's kind of their dynamic. So those were their purposes in the show, and I would say for the most part, they fill their roles very well. Some of them get used way more than others. Sally gets used the most. I would say she gets used very well, but that's their purpose in the show. And so this is going to finally lead into the comics, where my main thesis going in, and then I'll let you give your thought, is you cannot take the SatAM characters out of their initial story the way they are. They are very tied to their setting. They are very tied to the idea of being underdogs. They are very tied to this, like, Sonic needs to be here. He needs to be in one location, which to a lot of people is very counterintuitive for a character who's supposed to be about adventure and going off and doing things. You need to have these characters need to be ingrained in their world, in the world building. And I feel like if you take them out of that for the games, it's only going to cause problems unless you want to change them completely. So I've talked. I'll let you go, and you can lead the conversation from here if you have something to go into next.
Okay, well, to follow up, I agree with you with the fact of these guys, like these five, have a hard time really making sense outside of anything other than the background and location that is SatAM and was within the and their backgrounds within the comics. They're not really adventure. They're not really built to be in more of an adventure setting. But to be honest, I kind of want to take it a step further than that. Not only do I think that these characters don't work well outside, don't really make sense or function well outside of the background of SatAM, I genuinely think they kind of have problems. I don't know if I necessarily want to say functioning 100% on their own. Well, half of them definitely do.
Right, yes.
Yeah. But also when it just comes to having them function as individual characters, they all kind of have massive problems with their designs and ultimately how they're executed. And to be honest, as much as I've seen people, especially on Twitter, really trying to lobby for the fact of these guys need to come back, these guys need to come back, regardless of how I feel about Ian Flynn, I would actually go to the point of I don't think they can be adapted without rewriting their characters so much that you might as well just come up with new characters in response.
Right.
Because a lot of them have really, let me be clear, all of them have really fundamental problems with their character designs that I think limit them from being functional in anything outside of SatAM. And to be honest, even in that setting, they still have problems.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, like in SatAM's case, like I said, half of those characters, like Antoine and Rotor, barely have a function, and Rotor is on his way of being useless as soon as Tails, adapts to his game counterpart and becomes like kind of the mechanic character. Then what's left for him,
But actually, I would follow that up with like that. With there not being, with Rotor's problem being not just that he doesn't have like anything, not just the fact that Tails is also technical, but the fact is Rotor doesn't have anything else. Like, I would argue that you could have multiple technical characters in a story. Hell, Sally is arguably supposed to be technical as well. the problem that comes with Rotor is that once you end up getting past the fact that he's supposed to be another technical genius of the group, there's nothing left. Like, he doesn't really have any noteworthy personality traits, motivations.
Doesn't have any powers.
Doesn't have any other core. He doesn't have any core relationship, any other major relationships. And even if you did try to put him in a relationship with, not romantically, just in terms of having him be able to bounce off of several people that are meant to help define who he is. At a particular point, it's like you're essentially having to create, not even rewrite. You're essentially having to create a character for him, and at that point, you might as well just come up with another character who just happens to be a walrus, because then you can go ahead and have complete creative freedom without basically having to write into the design restrictions of SatAM and having that tone and having people say like, that's not Rotor. It was like,
yeah, for the like 5 people who are like, no, I understand him. You've done it wrong.
Right. And
yeah.
And it also just kind of, and to a certain extent, while Rotor definitely has this problem the worst, all of them kind of have I would argue all of them kind of have that problem. Like, who can I pick on? Really Bun.
I mean, do we want to like finish Rotor real quick?
Oh yeah, go for
it. Just like overall, because I think that because do you want to talk about any of his like stories, or do you want to save that for a general idea of the reboot era? Like,
actually, no. Let's break into Rotor now. Let's handle one character at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
So Rotor, when it comes to the most part, outside of SatAM, it really didn't seem like any of the writers actually kind of cared about him or had any clear idea about him. Like, when it came to Flynn, as far as I can tell, he pretty much tried rewriting him like 3 or 4 times during his run, because he did not seem to have a clue about who he was. Like, even during the reboot, when he ended up kind of writing him into the story, where Rotor's whole purpose was essentially to basically lampshade why they keep getting distracted with B plots while the planet is basically blowing up. He ends up having one conversation after having one story with Sally, even though that was his entire personality, after having one conversation with Sally, that entire personality's dropped, and now he's like a completely different character. And it's like,
yeah, because that would have been a very good, just like consistent conflict of like, he's the guy who's like if Sally's like the planner in the moment, he's like the big picture guy, because that was kind of how he was portrayed in that little mini story. Is he's all about the big picture. And so it would have been nice if maybe it's something like, instead of like you could give him the role of like knowing what's going on, like with everything. And then you could even, if you want to build up that arc of him coming to appreciate things, you could do the fact that like, Rotor, you know all about these little details about the world that we're trying to save, kind of similar to Nicole's thing. But you know all these little details, but like you're getting lost in them. You're not actually caring about what we're trying to protect here. But like you said, that gets resolved really fast. And then if we get rid of that, what's left for Rotor? And there's nothing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with there being a character who's defined by an arc. And once that arc's done, like, what do you do with them? I think that's fine, because you can just develop, you can just make that character the embodiment of exploring that idea. But when you just resolve it so fast, then what's left? Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. And the only thing that really Flynn seemed to remotely even have up his sleeve, and this really does, and I kind of mentioned this last time, but I think this bears repeating. The only thing Flynn really had in plan, for the most part, or at the very least, the only thing that Rotor seemed to have going for him alongside that, was the fact of his issues with his, let me rephrase, his quote unquote issues with his dad. Because Flynn at that time was trying to say like, oh yeah, all the characters are going to end up getting rivals, and he tried establishing Tundra, his dad, Rotor's father, as his rival. But it doesn't do any of the basic elements of establishing who his rival is. And but when it comes to Rotor in particular, it doesn't really mean anything. Like you were talking about, like when I showed you this last night, you were talking about how the fact was like it didn't really seem like it impacted him in any way. It didn't really seem like he had any reason to try to follow after him or to really have any reason to meet him again. It was just, oh, my dad's a bad guy. I'm sad now. And it's like, it did nothing to help define him. It did nothing to help define or really add to his character to add to his character. You honestly kind of got more, it didn't really do anything to further anything really. It's just like it was more or less pointless.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of what could, even with that kind of bare bones setup, which, because you can something with that if you execute it right. So I was thinking, what could they have done to really like push this? And what I think you would just need to do is you either draw a parallel in the fact that Tundra is looking at the big picture and he chose this. He chose like I guess submission basically. But then he's framing it as like, no, but now I'm in charge. And then you have Rotor, who's also a big picture guy, if we kept that. But he took it in the, the opposite direction. But is he just as, not just as heartless, but just like, is he also kind of in a similar way reflecting his dad in the sense that he's not thinking about the people that they're trying to save because he's thinking we'll figure it out in the long run. And Tundra is also thinking, oh, I'll protect the South in the long run because I'm in charge and I'm the strong. So you could either do a parallel, which they didn't do, or perhaps you could set up how you could either change it and make it something to where Rotor's a very kind and kind of maybe like a shyer person, because it's kind of hard to get a read on like what his attitude is. He's not really mellow, but he's not really like energetic. He's just kind of there. Like that's kind of just the biggest problem with him. But you could have it set up to where Rotor's just kind of like this really nice guy, and so they kind of look at him as like, oh, he's the big guy. He's really sweet. No, he's really smart, but he's really like humble and stuff. Then you have his dad who contrasts that, and what you could easily do is have it be something to where when they capture Sonic and them, you show like him be like, well, here's what you're missing out on, son. While you're building your toys, I'm using weapons, and he could like maybe destroy something, like burn down a village or something. People don't have to die, but he could like roboticize someone. He could burn down a village and terrorize people. And then, Rotor could look at that in horror, basically. And I think that would immediately give you a feeling like, oh man, that sucked, Rotor. Like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But like you said, all they really have is just, oh, you work for the bad guy? That's not cool. I don't like that. And then Sonic's like, hey, dude, you okay? You don't suck. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And then he leaves, and then he's done.
Yeah.
And then we never mention again.
And even then, and to a certain extent, and just to add on to that, one of the things that you should think about one of the things I say every rivalry should have is that those two characters want to compete against each other. They have almost a need to be able to either fight, beat, or even just disprove the other one wrong. Like that's what really makes a rivalry work, is that they're meant to be wanting to challenge each other. And even ignoring everything else, it's like there's nothing for Rotor or even Tundra to want to see the other ever again. So when you end up getting to the end of the story, it's like even if the comics kept going after that, was there anything that you could have done with these two to like anything that by the time that story ended, was there any reason that Tundra or Rotor needed to see each other after that?
No, it would just be happenstance. Like, oh, we're in this place again.
Right.
But it's not, because it's not like, it's not even like, it's not even something to where Rotor's like, no, I'm gonna liberate the South and free it from you once and for all. And like, it's not even that, to where it's like, no, there's a reason to come back. That's even simpler. What you could have done is just, hey, this is our home, Dad. Why are you making it worse than when Eggman was here? And then I'm gonna, when I save the world, I'm gonna take it from you. Like something like that. Like that's pretty simple. But even that's not there. It's just, you're working for Eggman, and I don't like that. So it's very, very bare bones. And of course, all that stuff might have been added later, but you did not set up. The only thing that was set up for him in the first place is just, I don't like that my dad sucks. Well, good. You know, I would hope you wouldn't. Maybe it'd be more interesting actually if you did. If you were like, you know what, maybe my dad has a point. I don't know, but just being upset that your dad is evil just doesn't really it doesn't give you much, because again, there's nothing else to Rotor. There's no personality to be like, Rotor is this type of person, so how would he react to this information? It's just, here's Rotor, and he is connected to this information. The end. You know, there's no emotional hook. So I yeah. And then that's pretty much it for Reboot Rotor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing I was gonna say, because I know someone might bring this up, he's very kind to Nicole. I like the scene. I do like the one scene where he gives up his position as a council person, but and I do appreciate that he saved Tails and he got his back broken for him. But those are things that could have been given to any character. Like Tommy Turtle could have done that, and I would have been like, oh, that was cool, Tommy Turtle. That doesn't mean I like Tommy Turtle. Yeah. It's just a matter of, hey, there's good in the world. Cool. I like seeing that in my media, but it doesn't matter that it's Rotor to me. So that's just the one other thing I was going to bring up. But yeah, I think just overall Rotor, if anything, honestly, I'm fine with having a Rotor character in terms of like his design. It doesn't have to be Rotor for the 5 fans who will get mad. Maybe he has more fans, but I think there is value in trying to explore the idea we were talking about, where it's someone who looks at the big picture and slowly comes to appreciate what they're trying to protect. I think that's pretty cool. So if Sonic ever wanted to have a character like that, I'd be fine with it in like the more grander narratives. But for now, with Rotor as he stands, I think he is definitely the weakest link, and there's just nothing to go off of. But yeah, that's probably it for him.
Yeah. Well, actually, if I can follow that, I think that ends up leading to a good segue, because I would actually argue, and I think this would actually be a good discussion. I would argue Antoine is actually the weakest link, because here's the thing: Antoine, for the most part, is one of the few characters I would actually argue has probably the most personality of the group, but he's also, I would actually argue, the worst to fix, because unlike the other characters who are more or less designed to at least be decent people, Antoine's designed to kind of be the worst. It's just designed to be the worst, and there's really nothing about him that's salvageable besides he can sometimes not be a complete a pissy coward. Like, more like he has his moments of like, oh, I can be a hero this time, or even sometimes in the comic where he actually was shown to, at the very least, be willing to fight. But generally speaking, it's just outside of those moments, there's really nothing to salvage, or at the very least, depending on what you want to salvage. Yeah. For example, when it comes to his design, this has been a thing since SatAM, where he's always been designed to be kind of two-faced, where you'll have like the smarmy, overly arrogant character that loves to just be a braggart and talk about everything that they like, talk about themselves in like the high esteem, like they're the best person there. But then when any type of challenge comes up, he turns into an immediate coward and is just trembling anywhere he goes. And he just trembles and just completely gets terrified by anything that happens around him. And before you even get into what happens with him in the reboot, besides just turning him into not being that, which, okay, what else can you really do with that design without completely rewriting him?
Yeah, exactly. There's just with Antoine, it's the type of character where, yeah, like you said, he has a big personality, which could work depending on, especially if you were like a really good writer and you could make him like say really funny stuff. Like if he was like good at being like a smack talker, like that would be fun. But I think we'd both agree that never happens. So that's just something that there's nothing we can really go off there. What was that?
Oh, and on top, I think a good comparison about figuring out, like, to see how you can do a character like Antoine properly is Usopp from One Piece, because because he has a lot of things in common. He does have a lot of things in common with him. But the thing about Usopp is that not only is he, let's be honest, better set up to be funny, he's also not established to just be an obnoxious twat. Like he's also shown to have positive and fun and healthy relationships with at least with everyone in the main cast.
Well, there's a heart to him.
Right. But Antoine, besides Bunny, and I'll talk about that later, who else does he have a good relationship with?
Yeah, really no one. Because with Sonic, it's just kind of like Sonic picks on him, and he's just like gotten used to it, I guess. You know,
or he ends up actually trying to snipe at him, and it's just really bad at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I said, he just causes conflict by either like he's too loud on missions, or he gives bad advice to a character or something like that. He just causes conflict, but not in a way that's endearing or like has like I see why he did that. Because you and I would probably both agree he's a very insecure character, obviously, but
right.
We don't. But it's not like you could talk about Antoine as like he's really insecure about this. It's just that he's insecure, that he's not as cool as he thinks he is, and he's not. Like that's true. That's it's not like he was told at a young age that he needs to like. This is something they could have done. He was told at a young age that he's going to grow up to be a warrior like his dad, like a soldier, and so a soldier is like the highest honor of like an army person, and so whatever he's thinking, a commander, and so if he's going to become that, then he needs to act like he's that already. And so you would find out later that like, the reason he brags, the reason he goes after the princess, the reason he does all these things and blah, 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 is because he is trying to live out what he believes he should be, even though he knows that he is a coward. Done. I was going to say that sounds pretty interesting, actually. But none of that's there. There's no pathos. Is that what it's called? Ethos?
Pathos, basically.
Yeah, there's no heart to it.
Yeah.
It's just that, and that's the same thing with Rotor. They just are what they are, but there's no like heart behind why they are, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
However, the reason I'd argue that Antoine is still the weaker link of the group, because the thing is, when it comes to Rotor, like we said, like we both agreed on, the whole idea is like when it comes to fixing Rotor, you would have to put in so much effort that you might as well just come up with a new character. But with Antoine, you would have to essentially come up with a new character because in order to fix most of this, because when it comes to fixing Rotor, it's mainly about adding so much stuff in. But when it comes to fixing Antoine, not only would you have to add things in, you'd have to remove it. You have to remove a lot of elements too. And at that point, it's like, why even have them?
Yeah. Actually, here's something really funny. So my friend, I was having him read through the Archie comics starting from around when Sonic comes back from space. And so he didn't know about the evil Antoine plot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I don't know if you knew this, the writers didn't know that because that was originally just supposed to be Antoine, that he was going to have gone dark, basically. But he was like, dude, nobody told me that Antoine was like the coolest character. And the reason he thought that is because the story for evil Antoine back when it was just that he was Antoine is that with Sonic gone, he had to step up and try to put aside his feelings for Bunny, put aside his cowardice, and become like a strong leader. And now everyone's kind of put off by him, but he's doing it for the good of everybody. And so he was like, dude, Antoine's awesome. That's like the coolest thing I've ever heard in this comic. And so I was like, yeah. So like that could have been a really actually interesting story to where you like it's kind of similar to what I said earlier, where he kind of becomes something better or wants to be. And so my theory of like if they actually followed through with this and didn't make it evil Antoine is that you would have it be that everyone's put off by this whatever, but he's like done his job. Like Sonic's back. He's kept the kingdom in check. He's been strong for everybody. He's done his job. And now it's okay if he lets himself be vulnerable again, and he doesn't know how to do that. And he can have that by trying to mend things with Bunny, and that would allow him to become more vulnerable and stuff. Obviously, that didn't happen because apparently people complained because they didn't like Antoine had become. I guess they wanted him to be an annoying coward, so they just made it evil Antoine, and that's where we are. But it's just funny to me that like there was actually kind of an interesting Antoine being set up, and it would have been really interesting to follow that character, and then they were just like, nah, whatever, go back to what he was, which is nothing. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to completely flip and explain why I like Antoine. So at least in the pre-boot. So a lot of it has to do with me is just the premise of I have seen SatAM where he's the most like infuriating person ever. And now in the pre-boot era, he's just like mellowed out and he's like actually just kind of competent and he's like sometimes funny and he's got a nice relationship with Bunny to where like he really cares about her. He's supportive, and it's just kind of just like this clash of like he was the worst person ever, and now he's like just kind of a cool guy. And I guess it's just the fact that I know where he came from that like I just kind of enjoy seeing him not suck and just be kind of competent and have his goofy accent and just be nice to people. Whereas that is the thing I've been complaining about with Rotor, which is that he's just like some nice guy. But since Rotor didn't have anything to bounce off of, like it's just like this harsh contrast of like how much I hated Antoine that I'm just like, you know what? If he's going to be a cool guy now, whatever, I'll let him be a cool guy now. So it's very superficial. It's like not good writing at all that it's come to this. But like I actually do enjoy Antoine in pre-boot. I enjoy his relationship with Bunny because he is just now a mellow person. And I'm like, man, you used to be so insufferable. I'm glad you grew up, buddy. So, and even Sonic kind of lampshades that in one of the issues I have you read, where Sonic's kind of being the guy who's complaining and stuff and being like, I don't want to do this dumb. And Antoine's just like, well, this, and this. And he's like, when did you become the responsible one? It's like, it comes with time. I'm like, yeah, cool. Antoine's a cool guy now. But unfortunately, he has none of that kind of background in Reboot. So if you want to go over him there.
Okay, yeah, the Reboot. Okay, you remember I said that he was kind of two-faced in the original. He was kind of two-faced in the original series.
Yes.
Okay, here he's four-faced.
Okay.
So basically, when it comes to how he was handled in the Reboot, it depends on who he's interacting or what's going on in the story. But he has one of four personalities. He's either the smarmy boastful, the smarmy and boastful. You have the cow. You also have the coward when things get serious. Then when he's interacting with Bunny, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. I'm gonna get back to that. When he's Bunny,
like suave, sweet man.
He's generic. He's the generic romantic.
Yeah.
And when it's a fight, when he needs to be remotely competent or things are at absolutely zero tension, but something's going down, then he can be a competent fighter.
Yeah, and not like a cool, competent fighter, because the action in the comics is never usually anything spectacular. So he just kind of like, oh, he hit the robot. Well, that's good. I'm glad he didn't miss and fall. Yeah, Yeah. So it's not much. Okay, gotcha. So continue.
Okay, so coming back to the romance, and I think this is a good way to segue into the other character, is when it comes to the romance itself. And the problem I have with this is when it comes to, at the very least, his side of the relationship, when it comes to the Reboot, all it really is just them making cutesy all it is just him making cutesy faces at her and just kind of really just saying, I will be there for you stuff. There's nothing really there to the relationship other than just they look at each other he gives her doting looks, and that's it. It's suggested later that, oh, I was feeling insecure, but then I met her and then I stopped being insecure, which, even ignoring a lot of the unfortunate implications about that, which I'll definitely get into with Bunny, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just kind of, oh, the one element that still kind of isn't resolved. kind of isn't resolved in other places. It's supposed to be resolved with this relationship, and
It was like resolved off screen in an offhand comment that I used to do this thing once, but I'm glad I don't anymore because you helped me with a thing that we also didn't see, and now we're here.
yep.
Which, uh, which would be like, I don't know. That'd be like if we like met up with, like, we just start the series of One Piece. We're gonna probably use One Piece a few times, so I'll just try to stick with that so we don't go to too many topics. If you like start with One Piece and like Nami's already in the group, and she's just like, man, remember when I used to like steal from you guys and do like a bunch of really kind of mean things, and I kind of used you a few times, but because Luffy's such a cool guy and he helped me out in that amazing battle that you guys won't get, the audience won't get to see, I've now become like a really I've come to really care about you guys, and I value you as team members who are gonna take care of me, and I want to take care of you. And then they continue their story like that.
And for those of you guys who haven't read the comics, that is pretty much the exact way that they deliver that information. It is not natural in the slightest. It's pretty much just.
I mean, it's in one page, right? It's just on like one page, right?
Yep.
And they're just talking. It's not like there's like a flashback, because usually unfortunately how they kind of do it is they have characters talk while fighting. So it's like the kids who are reading to see like, oh, he kicked a robot, but then they're talking about like the plot. And so that's like what's happening in that scenario too, right? Is they're just doing action and then just talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so this comes right back to the Rotor thing, where it's like Rotor was a character who is just like, he exists and we are going to attach this information, not he is a character and we're going to attach this information. How would he react to it? So with Antoine and his like romance with Bunny, it's something to where it's like, here's Antoine. He's the coward character. And he has a romance. It's like, oh, okay. Well, how would he get a romance if he's kind of a coward? How'd that go? It's like, oh, well, that was resolved. Oh, so so now it's just information put on Antoine. There you go. There's no emotional hook of like what had to be sacrificed or what had to be gained or what these two connecting means. It's just, oh, that's information. He's married and he cares about his wife. Well, anybody could care about their wife. Duh. So, yeah, we're coming back to this kind of the similar problem of just like giving these characters attributes, but not giving them character,
Mm-hmm.
Not giving them a dynamic, I guess.
And that ends up kind of being one of my sticking points with this group in particular. But I think I'll save that for the end, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's for Antoine.
Yeah.
You want to go to Bunny?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll let you start actually, because I don't really know where to start with her.
Okay, Bunny. Okay, so when it comes to her character design in particular, I actually find her to be like, obviously, since she's the character who ends up getting either roboticized or in the reboot, or how she is in the reboot comics, getting her limbs basically torn off and basically having to get them replaced with limb enhancements. She is easily one of the more tragic characters in the story, and I think there is a lot of story potential with her. There are the problem. Oh, now I can get into a lot of the problems with how she's been how that was executed in story. But when it comes to just a general overall, okay, let's say you decided to bring her back and use her in another story.
Yeah.
I think that's a horrible idea. Not because because at the end of the day, unless you are willing as whoever is going to write and deal with this kind of subject, write for the franchise, unless you are willing to admit and actually go completely, really play, actually do it respectfully, but at least do, how do I put this? Unless you're willing to go completely all in on the darkness and and how heavy that type of material is when it comes to the idea of either someone basically having their limbs forcibly changed from them, or having their limbs basically ripped off and placed, and having robot limbs placed on top of them. I'm not, which is kind of, even with Shadow in the mix, she's still one of the darkest characters. I'm not entirely sure if she's worth bringing on, because that is such a tonally dissonant from every other character. And not gonna lie, when I've seen other modern cartoons even dip their toe in going in that direction, they usually end up tripping over themselves with all of the what the fuckness of that subject matter. And I don't really know if trying to do that with Bunny is if it's worth doing that with Bunny, because if you're not doing that, I'm not into. I gotta be honest. I'm not entirely sure if you're not going completely all in with that premise.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's the point of bringing her on, because.
Well, you can continue.
No, that's pretty much it. But what you were saying?
Okay, so I'll fight back against that a little bit. So I don't think you should do the amputation. I did never, because like you said, that's way too like serious. However, I think she would actually probably be one of the best characters for the games, because when you think of the Sonic characters, and especially in terms of the games, they're kind of very archetypical. And that's what people like about them. They have amazing character designs, and then they just have a personality that you're like, yeah, Knuckles is tough, and when I play him, we break walls, and he's like kind of dumb or whatever, but he's like got a good heart, and he guards his thing, and it's cool that he guards his thing. The end. So, or Sonic, he's the hero, he's cool, all that stuff. I think that Bunny would actually work really well as a rule of cool character, because what you do is we already have robotization as a thing in the Sonic games. And the Sonic games...
Well, actually, we don't.
Well, we used to.
Well, kind of like putting the animals inside of the robots has always been a thing, but the animals turning into robots, though, I think that was just in SatAM.
Yeah. So, well, basically what I was going to go off of is that we've already established that, like, because that's a horrifying thing in and of itself, that these are these creatures that are being locked inside these cages, and that they are they're controlling these robot monsters who are capturing other people. But the games do not present it as that, because they're just enemies. So I think it's very likely you could just completely gloss it over and just do a rule of cool thing of like, yeah, they tried to get me, but I'm actually half it, kind of like Omega, basically, where it's like I'm half what Eggman tries to create, and it didn't work on me. Like, I got out or someone saved me, and now I'm gonna fight back and destroy Eggman. That's why people like Omega, is that he was like this. He's like this creation built for destruction, and he's like, no, I'm gonna beat up Eggman and all his robots. You can have a similar thing to where that's Bunny. However, the fun part about Bunny, her archetypical character, is that she is like the sweetest character and is so nice and all that stuff. So I actually think that since the games already kind of gloss over any horrific ideas of anything Eggman does, I think you could just have it be that he did an experiment where he was trying to make robots or whatever, didn't work on Bunny, and now she's going to kick his butt. And I think she would actually fit in rather well. Because in the games, because I don't think you need to go into it, because the games don't ever try to, in terms of the people being captured. Like even Sonic Forces, like the game, like Sonic was tortured. Whatever, I'll still fight you, Zavok. Like, they don't care. Nobody cares. So, nobody's taking anything seriously. So I think that she actually would fit in rather well. If that makes any sense.
No, you're right. I guess one of the reasons why I was I would agree with you on that. I guess one of the reasons why I was leaning more towards that I don't really think it would be a good idea is because a lot of the people who I see trying to defend this or trying to argue like, oh yeah, she should totally be in there, they want to go into the dark material. They want, and I'm just like, that is not work. Like I know, because a lot of the times when I see people who are going for this, they really just want to really make it dark and serious. It's like, yeah, I want to show like this isn't just like every other cartoon. Like, we can get dark and gritty, and it's like, that's not. And I'm just kind of like, no. Yeah, let's be honest here. This is probably about as close as you can get to. This is probably closer. This is probably as close as you can get to Assault. on someone, and I think in that context, when I see some people try to argue that, yeah, we should try bringing her in and we should try really going into the grim dark nature, I kind of sit here and go like,
Yeah, there's too many implications.
yeah, no, that's such heavy subject matter that even if Sonic was up for the franchise was up for going into darker territory, that is so not worth that is such a minefield of blowout that can come from trying to handle that type of material, which I don't think would be a good idea. Now, if we just look at her and just running off the premise and off of that motivation, I actually would agree with you that yeah, that could work, but that would work. And I guess if they were willing to also say like maybe like before Eggman was trying to put them in cage, before he was working on just using animals as just like the energy to control to power up his own robots, he was originally or even like after mastering that, he decided to try to see if he can actually turn flesh into robots. Maybe then Bunny would actually kind of work. Now, I think there's a lot.
Yeah, you could even frame it as like, oh, he doesn't want to create a Metal Sonic. He wants to make Sonic work for him, like turn him into Metal Sonic. And then it's like, oh, that's a mental thing that I connect to. I know who Metal Sonic is. Whoa, he wants to turn the real Sonic into Metal Sonic. Whoa, and then we meet Bunny. Bunny is a failed attempt at that. She's gonna kick his butt. The end. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you though. What were you gonna say?
Basically basically just building off. All I was really saying is that I do think that it would require a lot of other character building on top of that, such as not only developing a little bit more of a more distinctive personality in comparison to the others, but I don't think that would be too hard, especially for her, because there's not really a tomboy in the group, to be honest. Like the closest, like there's not like a more I will proudly wear pants kind of girl in the group. So I think that would actually. So I don't think that would be too hard to really bring into the story. I don't think it would be hard to make her distinctive. I think there would be a lot of building, but I think for at least that basic premise of her being like a past Eggman experiment, which let's be honest, outside of Omega, there's not really like none of the characters really have had like any type of connection.
Shadow is a created being,
but he was from Eggman's grandfather. So
I know. I'm just saying he still exists within the world of like this is a thing we're willing to be like this because that was the point I was going to make. Is that I was thinking about Lilo and Stitch recently, and when they talk about like how the fact that Stitch is a created creature, like he's an abomination, but nobody ever focuses on that in the story. What they focus on is that he's evil. So that they don't go in, they don't like try to like focus on the like when they talk about like, oh, Jumba made experiments. They don't talk about the fact that he's like creating life and like taking it out of like all these different things. And is that like an assault on nature? And is he playing God? They don't do that. It's just the fact that he made them evil, Yeah. So it's that kind of thing where I think you could just easily gloss over the actual bad things, like the think about things, and just be like, no, what's the problem with Bunny being roboticized or whatever? It's not that like, oh, you took a piece of me, like assaulted me. It's that like I'm not like normal anymore, you jerk, and I'm gonna destroy you. Or it's just something to where like you tried to destroy me, and that's not very nice of you, darling. Like there you go, and she's gonna fight back. And I think people would see her in the same light as like Blaze, where it's like Blaze is a princess who guards these emeralds from her own planet, and she's basically like a parallel universe Sonic, and she's like a loner, but she grows friends and stuff. Like that's not too much, but like it's enough that people really like her, and I think that's what you could do with Bunny real quick.
Yeah. No. Well, I agree with you. I was just gonna argue. I was just adding on that there's not really anyone in the group who's had like a negative effect from Eggman, and I think that would be a little bit. That actually would be kind of distinct because like no one, because like every character in the story for the most part is meant to be more of an adventure kind of character that while they regularly do interact with they do regularly interact with Eggman, they do also have adventures and other stories about them bouncing off of interacting with other characters, with other villains, and etc. So it would be kind of cool to see like one character who has.
Yeah, I think people would just say she's cool. And they'd be like, "Dude, this character's cool. What the heck?" Like that would be all people would probably think about. I think it would be an Omega situation where people like in Sonic Heroes, they love Omega just because of like how funny the idea is of like all the things he says and just like, dude, he wants to like destroy Eggman. Sick, bro. Join the team. And they would just be like, dude, there's like this nice girl who can now like fly and like shoot lasers and she's like a rabbit and stuff. Sick. Let's play as that character.
Yeah.
So I think she would. I think she could actually fit in rather well. But yeah. One more thing I wanted to add about Antoine, not doubling too far back, but just in terms of his relationship with Bunny. I will say again, I think similarly to who used to be a coward, I think the Archie pre-boot era works a little better in the sense that there are little storylines of like when Bunny had to get her parts changed because like the metal on her was like poisoning her body, and they were like, oh, if we change your arm and stuff, then it's not the original body. That means you will never be able to like be de-roboticized because it's not the original. And so Antoine had to like comfort her and be like, I don't care about that. Like I've never cared about that. I love you for you, all that stuff. So that's good. And then also there was that whole storyline where Nagus takes away her, accidentally removes her robot parts, and she kind of goes to this idea of feeling like she's like not helpful and stuff. And Antoine's there for her in that situation. So I just feel like there are more scenarios of Antoine being there for her, whereas what we talked about with Reboot is we don't see those. So it rings hollow. So I think there's just more build up to it to where, because you read Tails Adventure, right?
Yes.
Yes. So one of my kind of like just favorite parts about that is just kind of like the little like banter moments they have with each other, like the part where she tries to like, or Antoine comes with the plan to like trick the guards and kind of pretend that like, oh, my wife has betrayed me. She was evil all along. I'm going to kill myself. But they don't say it like that. But, he's going to jump. And so they're all on the same page. Like he doesn't actually believe it. And it really does like present them as like a power couple. Like it does that a lot in the story to where like they won't abandon each other. One's really strong. One's like, he tries to be brave. Not that he's like a coward anymore, but like he's still scared. He has kind of like that he has more of Usopp traits in Pre-Boot to where it's like he's scared but he'll fight. So I think he just has more positive attributes, and those positive attributes mesh well with what Bunny already has, which is just a really good base. And so when they do work together and they are just kind to each other, I think that it does come off as like, oh, it's not that I'm invested in like this really interesting relationship, but if there's gonna be a relationship in the story, I'm glad it's these like really defined personalities. Like they're the embodiment of like the hick and the like stereotypical French guy, and so that's just like interesting to look at. It's funny to see their accents bounce off each other. They kind of look fun together. They're just I just feel like they just have positive interactions, and therefore since they already have other either interesting or just like distinct things in Antoine's case, I think it meshes well enough together that I just like seeing them on screen. Even if they broke up, I wouldn't be like, oh no, I'm so invested in their relationship. I'd be like, well, that sucks. I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see more fun relationship dynamics. Yeah. So that's where I'd say Pre-Boot has a little bit more of an edge, where they actually show those things that Reboot just kind of says. I don't know if you had anything to add to that. Because how did you feel about them in the kind of the Tails adventure? Because one of the moments I really liked was where he was like, oh, I got a sword for you, hun, and I made sure it was this kind so you don't have to scratch up your knuckles anymore. Like just kind of little like moments like that of like, oh, they would know these things about each other. Or them sitting on the beach and being like, since they're in the context of the Sad AM and stuff, it's like, do you feel like us getting together was like a just because of the heat of the moment? It's like, well, even if it was, I wouldn't trade it because I like, I love being with you, and it doesn't really matter because even though we've been through so much, it's good that we get to be together. And again, since they have such like kind of fun or just like more upbeat personalities now, it's just like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool that life sucks, but they don't have to suck anymore because they like each other. They could just be nice and friendly and love each other. And it's like, oh, that's nice. So that's kind of what I get out of it.
right now I'm trying to figure out. Right now, just to be clear with everybody, we ended up sending each other issues over what we wanted to try to talk about. Just to give each other an idea about what we want to talk about and a view for the characters in particular. And when it comes to what Ian sent to me, I was looking over. I ended up reading over the Tales Adventure story, and one of the things about it is that I will definitely say they had definitely more of an interaction personality there than they did in Reboot. It's just I don't really want to say this because I ended up reading over it and I can't really say anything bad about it per se. It's just something about it didn't click with me, and I'm not entirely sure why per se. And it's not that.
I mean, it might just be that because again, to be more transparent, is that you like basically have like Reboot memorized, like you've been like analyzing that forever, and I basically have Pre-Boot memorized. Like we don't like you kind of just like know certain stories. Like I don't even know if you've read all of it. Have you?
All of Tales Adventure?
No. All of like Pre-Boot in general.
Oh, not all of Reboot. I've read most of it here and there, but not all of it.
Yeah, but you're so what I'm trying to say is like your investment level in like that side of the story is very minimum because that's just not something you really care about. So you don't really have like the journey of like me going through like all 300 of the old issues of like the garbage ones, the pretty good ones. Oh, these were good. So I have like a built up connection to it, even if like the journey wasn't perfect. Whereas again with Reboot, it's just like what, like 50 issues. And
30.
so, yes. Well, I was trying to count. Does the universe count it to like?
Oh, if we count universe, it's closer to 60. But yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm just saying that it could just be that because again, if you're just like, well, I can't really think of anything wrong with it. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but it might just be that you just have no connection with this version of these characters. Because I mean, I'm sure you didn't read the story where she has to get her arms changed and Antoine's there to comfort her, or like the kind of the little smaller stories where like, you know, when she comes back to normal, like maybe you just kind of read those ones and they didn't leave much of an impression on you. So that could just be it.
I actually did read them. They were okay. They were pretty much were like you said. I read them and I didn't have much of an impact on them. They didn't have much impact on me.
Yeah, that's fair. So that could just be it. If you don't have anything like specific, I wouldn't say it's like because you're wrong. You don't have anything to fight me. But it's probably just something to where it's just like, oh no, it just didn't mesh with me. I can acknowledge that writing happened and that it was not bad, but it didn't connect with you, which is fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. Because that happens with me sometimes, where it's just like, oh, I acknowledge that things were written and that I understand why people would like them, but I don't. Sorry.
All right, but I do want to put a pin in their relationship because I want to come back to that when we come to
okay.
Yeah. But yeah.
So Nicole, I would say, right?
Yes.
Okay, you can go.
So when it comes to Nicole in particular, I find that she has a pretty interesting personality, and okay, so let me rephrase. I do think that she has it's pretty interesting how much of a fan base that she generally has, because while I did read the Reboot, and by no means do I think that she was awful. None of these, besides Antoine, none of these characters are like awful. Nothing about her genuinely I never really got like super emotionally invested with her. It's mainly just because a lot of her stories, even the ones I read about in the in the Pre-Boot, while she did have to deal with a lot of tragedy and problems when it comes to her situation, as a character I didn't really get much about her besides she's an AI program who has sapience, and she sometimes has problems with more abstract concepts. But besides that, so when it comes to the idea about bringing her into the group, bringing her into the cast, my thing is more not that she wouldn't fit, but more what would she ultimately bring besides just kind of being, hey, I'm an AI who's kind of brought back, and it's like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: how many of that story have you like consumed? Like the idea of like the AI who gains sentience and then learns about the world around them. Not like specific numbers, but have you seen that a lot?
Oh yeah, tons.
Okay. So here's where I would say that she could probably work, and it would probably be for the same reason she works with me, is that since when I was a kid I watched Sad AM, and like I said, I noticed things like, oh, her personality's kind of starting to shift and stuff. So I think it is just that she is that base idea done competently, and I would say well in some spots, because I think the moments where they show the that idea of like the AI who kind of like learns about life and like it's like whoa and like appreciates it. It's just kind of like an easy thing as a human to be like, yeah, that's cool, isn't it? Because it's just like a really good idea. So I think that it might be that since you've seen that a lot, it's just there's nothing divergent or like maybe specific enough with her personality to where, because her personality is that idea of like, whoa, like I'm this logical being, but I'm learning to have emotions and I care about people. Well, that's just part of that story. Now, I had never experienced that story whenever I watched Sonic Sat AM. And then as I grew older, I didn't watch anime as much, which I assume that's kind of more in that too. I kind of just grew up on Disney movies and things like that. So the idea of like and I didn't really watch any live action either. So Nicole is basically my only experience growing up with that concept, and she has a fantastic design, and it's cute, and she's like this, she's nice, and she's related to characters I like. So I feel like with a lot of people, it's either that they really love the design, which is a big thing with a lot of characters, Sonic characters, is I think that people love her design, and she fits her just like Sonic in his base form, like in the classics and stuff and adventure. They are an archetype that has a very appealing design, and then you just attach to it. The end. So I think that's where that fan base, and even me, because I really love Nicole, is that she is just that idea, that archetype done really well, I would say, or just well enough that it's like it's good. Like you would say it's good, I would assume. And then I just attach to it. Whereas but I agree with you that I don't think there's anything extra to it. Like there's nothing that would specifically go like, oh, but if you gave her if you put her in a different series, then she would not know how to deal with anything because she's this type of person. La, la, la. Like, no, it's just that idea of the AI gaining sentience and appreciating life. So,
right. And
yeah. And so that's where I think she actually could really work in Sonic games, because just like Bunny and just like Sonic, just like all these characters, they are archetypes with really appealing personalities. So if you just literally had her be like Omochao, like fill his role, and just like, whoa, it's a cute Lynx girl, and she's like nice, and every now and then she's like, whoa, Sonic, that was a funny joke, and then you go, haha, that's the cute Lynx computer girl, she gets it, and then you just like her. Like I think that's where she would fit in pretty well. She could be the AI, basically, just replace Omochao.
Yeah.
That's my big rant. Now it's your turn. Sorry, I stole this.
Okay, no, that's fine. To be honest, okay, so with these two in particular, I think, like I said, I don't think there's necessarily like anything. No, I'm not gonna say this for the end. I think this is probably a good place to do this now, so it tails in better with the other character. So one of the things that I'm thinking about right now, especially when it comes to these five in particular, is okay, we're bringing them into the story. They have their own archetypes. They have their own personalities that you can tweak them enough that they can function in the story. I guess my question here is, my overall concern is, one, we already have a cast of about 20 or so characters. Even if we even if we brought in a new writer entirely and they know how to handle them, why do we need to add in five more characters when we already have an oversaturated cast in particular? And when we already have an overcrowded cast in particular, because even ignoring antagonists, it's upwards of like 17, and there's no real core focus about it. And besides just the story mainly being told from Sonic's perspective, we just have a secondary cast just of 16 other characters, and a story that only has like 12 issues a year. Adding in 5 more, I don't see that being remotely practical or feasible. So I'm not against adding more, but if you're going to add them, I would like to see more of an idea besides just there's an archetype that they could be funny. What do they bring to the table or what do they bring to the story that you couldn't do with anyone else besides just their archetype, or how can they interact or bounce off of, or how can they interact or bounce off other characters. When it comes to Nicole in particular, this isn't to say that I don't think you could do this. I actually, have you ever seen Community?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen all of it.
To be honest, I am a weirdo, and I like thinking about, and I would, if I did ever get a chance to write for a franchise, I would want to throw characters off, have characters interact with each other that you wouldn't even remotely think about in the same scene, think about even being in the same room together and like see how they would interact.
Yeah.
I bring this up because like I would totally want to see Nicole and Knuckles have a similar back and forth with like Aunt Abed and Troy and Abed, and having that whole symmetry. Nothing that's as, let's be honest, romantic as Antoine as Abed and Troy, Troy and Abed, but to the line where it's like these two characters who like one's this super smart guy, one's this super smart being, this other one is not the brightest bulb but kind of cocky, but they really have like this good back and forth with each other, usually kind of liking and viewing their own views of liking and respecting the other's view, and maybe even having like their own like interests that seem to somehow overlap with one another. And I think that would actually be kind of funny to see them interact on a regular basis. But I bring it up in particular. But I bring that up in particular because my other concern is one of the things I don't like about IDW in particular, and one of the things I do think should happen in whatever revamp there is, whatever happens in the next revamp, is that there should be something of a concentrated cast, not having Sonic come in and rotate out whoever his sidekick is for that issue. Just have like a consistent, like have a core cast that you can rotate out, but it's generally a concentrated group. And with the Sadium characters, it's really just a lot of the people who are lobbying for them want Sonic and Tails back interacting with these five. And I'm just kind of sitting here going, why? And maybe this was fixed in the preboot. I read issues and they didn't really do much to change my mind on this. But not the reboot. The preboot didn't really change my mind on this, but the reboot definitely kind of showed that these guys had zero.
They feel quite superfluous.
Right, and they don't bounce off each other well, nor do they really bounce off of Sonic that well in particular. Like even Antoine, even though I still argue that by rival standards, he's been outclassed by arguably 6 characters in the franchise at this point. But even in the comics where Flynn was trying to write him to be a rival, he was just dead air. Like Sonic didn't even interact with him for a good chunk of the time because he was like so outclassed by everything. Like he's just such a non-presence when it comes to even be remotely considered a proper rival or a proper Lancer to Sonic's personality at this point. So I'm not against the idea of these guys ever I am against these guys just being completely ignored and just forgotten to the sands of time. I would prefer not that, but my whole thing is I'm trying to understand if they get brought back into the story, whether it's in the comics or in another reboot, what would be the benefit of bringing them into the story, and especially excluding either having to add on to the already existing quartet at minimum, or even replacing those characters. Why do we need to have these characters here? And when it comes to Nicole, there are plenty of ways you can make the AI thing work. Like I just finished The Good Place. Janet, who probably would argue she's not an AI, she was actually easily one of the best characters in the story, and easily had one of the best actresses who really ended up playing like 5 of the characters in one episode at some point. So I do think that it's possible to make this character function. I do think it's possible to make this character functional. But my thing I'm ultimately just kind of concerned about, and what I'm just trying to see if there is a proper answer to this, is it worth bringing her into the story? To add on to an overly crowded cast?
Yeah, and I genuinely think the way you do Nicole is you just give her Oma Chow's role. Like you literally just make her a very fun AI character. Like when the question mark explains things to you, instead of it being a boring robot, it is this cute Fox Lynx thing that just pops out of the ground and is like, "Hey, Sonic," and then she says the thing, and then you're good. Like I think she would actually just be like a good face for that, and just like
so she'd be the character in the menus.
Yeah, she'd be in the menus, but she would have a personality. Like if you're like if it's something to where you're like, oh, the sound menu, or you go to like to learn how to play a thing. Like I want her to have her personality of like kind of being like, I guess you would like do this or that thing, or like, I've not used legs, so I don't know how you do this or that, but go at terminal velocity, that type of thing. Just give her her design. People immediately love her, and then just give her like a kind of like a the goofy fish out of water kind of personality. And then I think that's it. Like I think that's honestly all you need to do with her, because like you said, if we add her into the story, there's really not much you can do unless we're going to have her like, I don't know, she hacks in. That's another thing you could do if you had to have her in the story. If we're gonna have more adventurous type games and we need more, I don't think we need more gameplay styles, but if we have to, you could just give her like fun little mini games. But instead of like anytime you want Sonic to break up the pace and have like a mini game, instead of it being we need to give Sonic this item or we need to give Sonic this, it's just like, all right, Nicole, you do this thing. And then you just give her little commands. So like, for example, like the drill wisp, you could have it to be like, okay, Nicole, I need you to go into the system. And then it's the same mechanic of like digging, but she's like moving around the wires and stuff. Or like, basically give her the powers of the wisps and then just have it like in a sense of like she has like these specific abilities, and they can just be either used throughout the level or they can just be used for whenever we want to break up the pace and have like a little mini game. Again, she's not part of the story in like any major way, like in terms of like, oh, she's going to have an opinion on things, but just like she's the AI, she's with Sonic, she's with you, the player, she exists. And then there you go. You can just have her be that if you have to have her in the story. But I would say just make her Omochao, and people would love her. So, okay. Yeah, I think she would function very well as just like she's the AI thing. Because think about that. Just think how much more fun, like, because people love personality. People love whenever like the HUD of your game has like a personality to it. Like in Kingdom Hearts 2, and every time you go to a level, it changes based on the world. So if you just had like Nicole is the HUD basically, and like could even have something like that, I think people would just be more invested in the game. Because they would have more of there would be a person basically, and it would just be fun. So I agree with you that I don't think she needs to be in any stories, unless they're gonna be like Archie, to where it's just like it's the Sad AM story, and we have like a kingdom we have to protect, and Sally's there and all that stuff. But if you're just gonna add Nicole, I think she has a very good utility she could serve and give a fun face to something that everybody hates, which is Omochao. So. Yeah. So I think she has a sort of purpose she could serve.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now we get to save this one for last.
Yes.
Oh boy. Oh god. Okay. I want to start this one out. I want to start this one out. So,
Go for it.
Okay. Sally Acorn. This chipmunk has been driving me up a wall. She's both fascinating and maddening to me for some reason. I don't really get it. Now, I just to clarify, I do not defend any of the main critical points I've seen. Quote unquote critical points I've seen of her, like, oh, why is she naked, or like all that crap. I don't even want to list it. But when it comes to her.
What about Mary Sue?
Okay, I'm not wild by that term for several reasons. Mainly because it's an to use a programming term, it's an overloaded term. It's an overloaded term that has so much definitions and so many definitions and so much quality. Yeah, basically, and I'm not a big fan of it. Okay, so when it comes to Sally in particular, I think so. Like whenever I try reading, like whenever I think I have a good idea about what bothers me about her character, I'll end up reading another issue, and it feels like I haven't hit the. It's not that I'm wrong, but it feels like I haven't hit the ground for it yet. Like I haven't hit like the ground. I haven't hit like rock. I haven't hit like the actual root, the bedrock of what the problem is. Like up to a couple of weeks ago, my main problem with her was just that I thought she was just kind of boring, and the writers clearly just wanted to write a character who was meant to be humble, and they wanted you to know that in particular. And then you end up sending me those, and then I end up reading Journey to the East, and those 2 issues, and the 3 issues that you sent me last night. It was 173, 198, 199, and I'm just like, oh my god, I usually don't dislike characters like this much. Why do I dislike her this much? Because she's not frustrated, because she's by no means is she like the worst character by any metric, but I do find her frustrating for several reasons. One in particular, and this is something I was that I noticed both in Journey to the East, to a certain extent in Spark of Life, and kind of throughout the reboot in particular, is that she has a bad habit of kind of taking, not necessarily her character, but how she's framed. She has a bad habit of kind of stealing this, taking the autonomy away from other characters, if that makes any sense.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like let's take Journey to the East, for example. So up to that point, we've been establishing that. Up to that point, Flynn had ultimately been establishing the issues that that Fiona had been causing for Tails, and all that whole drama that erupted between him and Sonic. And then we get to the Journey to the East. Out of nowhere, she needs to come in, and now she's starting to mess with. Now she's trying to emotionally manipulate Tails. Now, in this, and then in order to follow that up, we end up seeing the scene. The next thing that happens is that Sally comes in before Fiona could really do any major emotional manipulation. Sally comes in, punches her in the gut, and tells her then just tells her to stop it. Now, that is a major scene that has been like shared on Twitter, Tumblr, all over the place all the time. And after reading it, before seeing it on social media sites all the time, and then also seeing it in context, what genuinely bothered me was just the fact of how much that just kind of takes away Tails' autonomy in that situation. Because in any other story where that kind of stuff would happen, where someone is being challenged or confronted on a personal issue that they have, while it's not uncommon for their friends to try to step in, more often than not, it's usually about them trying to back them up, about backing them up, giving them support, not just taking away that character's chance in order to be able to stand up for themselves. Not because that it needs to be like a throwing them into a pool kind of situation, but more. Those stories are meant to be a way to establish that the character is overcoming a particular challenge or facing challenge head on. But instead, Sally comes in and just kind of undercuts it before Tails actually could have a chance to actually ultimately show that he's ultimately grown past that whole crush with Fiona, or ultimately gone over that problems that he had suffered because of that in the first place. I'm not saying that I need to see him hit her, but something along those lines to show that he's ultimately able to stand up and confront her.
Just stand up for himself.
Right. And the thing is, that happens but then Sally comes in and undercuts him. And the thing is, that happens pretty common with Sally. Like, throughout most of the reboot, pretty much every single time, to the point that pretty much throughout all the reboot, to the point that I genuinely curious why they even decided to have her in the cast in the first place. Throughout the entire story, every single time when the group is trying to go off and do something, Cream is always trying to be there in order to say, like, hey, I want to try to help. I want to help too. And then Sally always comes in with some form of excuse saying, no, you need to stay here, and either it's too dangerous or you need to do something else that really doesn't affect anything in the plot. And I'm just kind of going here like, why? Like, even ignoring like why is she even here? What is the benefit of constantly having her basically undercut her and removing her from the story? She's done this, and when it comes to Spark of Life, I know we kind of disagreed about this a little bit last night, but when it comes to Spark of Life, the whole thing is that you're essentially having a story where we're introducing Nicole's creator into the narrative and ultimately trying to figure out why she was ultimately created in the first place. And if the whole point of the story was about trying to get Nicole to ultimately understand and accept the fact that she is real, while I'm all for Sally and co being there to back her up and support her, why is the person who's supposed to represent that conflict, the person who created it in the first place, the one that she's completely separated from the entire time. Instead, it's more about the person who's who's meant to be the emotional crux of the story and the viewpoint and the one who's dealing with with said creator. It's Sally. It's not, and so instead of Nicole being the one who ends up really taking that lesson to heart and being the one who ends up confronting the person who is the one probably talking the most that she does not count as life, even though it's more or less of self-defense for himself. Instead of that being her moment to actually really declare that she is a human, that she is a living being, Sally is the one who ends up taking over that situation. And that seems to be one of the problems that I have with Sally, is that she just has this bad habit of just kind of taking the, this just for basically a term that that I feel like it just kind of fits here, kind of taking the air out of anyone's character growth and basically using it as a moment to give her using it as a moment for her to show that, yes, I'm the good one. And the thing is, I feel like that's always been kind of the one of the core problems when it comes to her design in particular. As a character in a vacuum, she's harmless. I have a couple of problems.
Just about to say that. I was just about to say that. I think it's a problem of the characters, like the nature of the character and what they would do in these scenarios, but the functionality of that character is not being like channeled properly. Because when I see these scenes, I'm coming at it as like just a fan of like a fan of like Sally being a kind-hearted person, blah, blah, blah. So I look at it as like when I see like her stepping up for Tails or Nicole, I see it as just that, as just like, that's the type of person she is, that she would step up for her friends and try to do that for them. I don't, whenever I read it, I don't look at it as from like this was a moment that Tails needed to kind of like make a stand, or like, not like you said, it doesn't have to hit her or anything, but make a stand, make it known that he's not being manipulated by that. But then I look at the story and I see that obviously he was being manipulated by it. So I just look at it as like, instead of Sonic having to step up for him this time, it's Sally, because again, during that time she wasn't there. So it's like, okay, Tails still isn't over it, obviously. So who's going to step up for him? Oh, it's Sally this time. Oh, that's cool that she's coming around and she's trying to make herself more known and get involved more in people's lives and stuff. Whereas the functionality of it means that other characters' stories need to be put on hold. And so maybe that's what frustrates you, where it's like, it seems like maybe where she gets precedence over other people's development, whereas it should either be happening at the same time as that character, like shared, like Tails should also get something, but it seems like it always goes to her.
Right. And I think that is kind of just one of the one of the more problems when it comes to her execution. It just seems like a lot of the story, let's be honest, especially when it comes to both SatAM and the comics, both the reboot and both the pre-boot and the reboot. Excuse me, I had a little bit of gas. When it comes to both the pre-boot and the reboot, it's all more or less structured around Sally's character. Like, the group is mainly structured around, mainly surrounded around and mainly led by Sally. The background is mainly about them trying to
reclaim her kingdom.
Right. The story. While Sonic ends up being the one who ends up being the muscle in the action, the one who's ultimately the one making the decisions, the one who's driving the plot. Even by the quote that you ended up saying before about how Eggman viewed the two, Sally's the one who's making those decisions. Now, I've always kind of had like my whole perspective of, if you're going to have a leader of a group, go ahead and have that be the protagonist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should be the protagonist. Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, when the protagonist is not just in most classic fiction, most modern fiction, unless they're trying to be artsy for the sake of it, the protagonist is usually the character who's the one who's not only the viewpoint, but also the character who's usually driving the story forward, usually the one that the story is mainly centered around their actions and how they impact the rest of the narrative. And we end up having Sally being that, that's already causing problems for Sonic's character in the first place. But when you get to the point that she's starting to more or less start doing this for other characters in particular, that does start becoming a problem. It ends up kind of hindering everyone else's character for the sake of trying to make her seem like a nice character. Now, I'm not saying that she should not be shown standing up for her friends, or trying to be more supportive. Not really, but that shouldn't come at the expense of other characters' character designs. And that's what ends up kind of being one of the problems I have with her general execution. Like, even back, and this isn't just something under Flint. This has been a thing all the way since Sadiam and the Sadiam. Like, even in that Bible, I just sent this to a friend of mine. I'm gonna read this verbatim, because this is a line that they ended up trying to write in for her character to try to show that they tried to show as like one of the first lines to show what her personality is like, what she's supposed to behave as. And it's like, and I can't see in any other context where this would be acceptable. Like, here it is. Hello, my name is Sally Acorn, not Princess Sally. Yes, I am a princess, but out here in the real world, titles are meaningless. I prefer to just be normal, but it's not always easy. People look at me like their leader, but I don't want to disappoint them. I guess it's in my blood. And it's like the writers in particular are trying to make you know that she sees herself as humble. She's trying to establish herself, like, they want you to know that she is humble. She is thinking about that she doesn't really hold her audience. She doesn't really hold herself that highly on her title. But if any other character spoke like this, it's basically trying to humble brag about themselves. And they would easily come off obnoxious. And if that was meant to be the intention of her character, which it clearly isn't, I actually would find that to be kind of fun. But instead, we end up having this character whose biggest problem with her design, outside of just having placing all this pressure on herself and not knowing what to do with it, and just sometimes getting hesitant about what actions she can commit. She's just kind of this nice, swell character that doesn't really have. I don't want to necessarily say any problems, but nothing really else there besides just I'm the command. She is besides, I don't want to necessarily say that she needs to have flaws, because I think that is focused on way too much when it comes to people trying to badmouth characters. But it's outside of the occasional moments of showing her kind of second guessing herself, which are always followed up with someone right around her saying, hey, it's okay, and it never has any consequences. She doesn't really have any challenges. Her highs, while her good moments, while are totally fine and completely acceptable, they're not that entertaining, and are just there to kind of show that she's this really sweet, nice, emotionally supportive character who's always there for her friends. And it's like, she doesn't have any place where you can properly challenge her on her character properly, because for the most part, she doesn't really have any flaws in her. She doesn't really have any weaknesses or any particular problems when it comes to her worldview, or when it comes to her actions, or in particular, besides just being hesitant. And that can only really do so much. You don't really have much in terms of, and when it comes to her positives, there's nothing really over the top or really like, oh my god, this character's a fucking badass. It's just kind of, she's really nice and supportive. And I bring this all, and even ignoring her good, quote unquote, good or bad traits, I also just kind of find it to be a problem that there's not really much to have jokes with her. And I know that's kind of weird, but there's no real moment where you can just kind of have fun or really just take some shots at. Like, pretty much every other character, it's almost incredibly easy to have some jokes with the personalities. Like Amy being over the top and having a crush on Sonic. Sonic's thinking that he's super cool, but he's a complete and utter dork. Shadow and his commitment to being 150% edge all the time. Uh-huh. And even when the characters don't have overt personality problems, you can usually have some fun in other ways with them. Like, for example, Tails doesn't really have any major problems, but you can at least try doing things with him that you can at least torture. You can like have some fun, like torturing him, or not necessarily torturing him is a little bit much, but having jokes at having jokes at his expense. But Sally, and just having fun with them in that regard. Like, for example, like for example in Tails' Adventure, where you end up having this one scene where Antoine and Tails are trying to walk back and figure out what to do next. And Antoine is complimenting him in the most obnoxious way possible, in the most obnoxious, condescending way possible, even to the point that he's getting his head, even to the point that he's patting his head and Tails is clearly is clearly aggravated by it, and you can at least have fun with him in that regard. But what can we really do with Sally? And I bring this all up, and and just to bring this back to my original thesis, I bring this all up because Sally's whole thing is, because the thing is, when it comes to bringing in Sally, when it comes to the fact that she has her, even ignoring the problems that other writers have had with her, with trying to show that she, going over the top and showing that she's so supportive and there for her friends, that ends up kind of handicapping their arcs, even ignoring that, when it comes to putting her, when she's so defined as the leader, but that ends up kind of causing problems when it comes to Sonic's proactivity in the narrative, when it comes to the fact that her character design doesn't really lend itself to either being challenged or really showing any over-the-top awesome moments, nor does it really give any moments where you can have any fun or jokes with her character's expense, I don't really get the benefit of adding her in. Without doing a really massive overhaul, I don't really get the benefits of adding her in.
Gotcha.
Besides just giving someone who could be the strategist, which half the Sonic. I mean, not Sonic. Huh?
Which could be anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just for consolidation purposes, at the very least. Like you could just give it to Amy. Or whoever, or Blaze, I don't know. Silver.
Or Tails.
Or Tails. Yeah, or Tails. Yeah, that would probably actually be really good for Tails. Just that he doesn't act like his age. Which he's already a genius, so that would work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the thing that I enjoy in terms of, for people who don't know, Sally is one of my favorite Sonic characters. Probably top 5. And that's including all of Sonic. So like games to anything. What I really like about her is I really like how she is established in the world as kind of like again, as much as I know you dislike the kind of the idea of like, because I was going to go back to this earlier. Now I remember, is that her character, people are going to take, I don't think they'll take it wrong. It's kind of like you want her to like know her place in the story and not act like she's the protagonist. But
I see. I can't even 100% blame you, because I'm like, yeah, I was trying to avoid it, but really that's kind of how it sounds. I don't want it to, not because because that's kind of my problem, is that I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, it's like Sonic should be the alpha. It's more.
But you don't mean it in the stupid way. You have like you've explained yourself, so I don't think you need to like defend yourself anymore. Like you've made it very clear why you think that, and I agree with you, and to the extent of that is a positive way to write Sonic, and that there's value to him being the one to be the protagonist, obviously. But with the show, oh sorry, I cut you off. I apologize.
Oh no, I was just going to defend myself. Keep going.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly fine. I think because you've explained it well enough. I think. For me, with Sad AM, again, going back to the idea of like what you're first exposed to. As far as I was concerned, Sally is the second protagonist of Sonic the Hedgehog, because I grew up with like Shadow the Hedgehog, which was like a complete, like, I know it's part of the continuity, but like when you're a kid, it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like the cool Shadow game where he has guns.
Sonic has a continuity.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, it sort of does. There's like one from like Adventure to Shadow, but whatever. So to me, growing up, Sally was the dual protagonist of Sad AM, because at the end she is the character who is in like the main like centerpiece of the opening, where like Sonic's distracting the robots, she's opening the big floodgate thing, he carries her, so there's like this like connection obviously established. Like if Tails was like where he is now, that would be like Tails doing that. It would be like Tails, Sonic distracts the bad guys, Tails flies down, he grabs the thing, he's not fast enough to get away from the water, and then he grabs his hand and they blast off. they blast off into the forest, and then they pose for the title screen. But no, it's not Tails, it's Sally. So as a kid, I just thought Sally was the second protagonist, and the way she is set up is that they both are fighting for the same thing. They're both fighting to like return their home and stuff. But Sally is like the heart of like the world, of like in terms of like what their world is like fighting for, like the kingdom. So it's not just like, oh, we're fighting for like my house, you know, and my family. We're fighting for like like we're not just fighting for like to get Uncle Chuck back. It makes it feel grand of the idea like we have like the princess of our nation or whatever, the place we live, and she is friends with this like hyperactive, doesn't follow the rules, hedgehog, and he's got these powers, and he doesn't really care too much about like what we got to do. We just got to win. We just got to do that. And she's the one who brings in the story aspect of like she's interested in the world. She's interested in what Eggman's really planning. She's interested in all of these things, and she carries kind of like the weight of the story. So that allows Sonic, like I said earlier, it allows Sonic to be Sonic and not have to weigh anything down on him in terms of like the plot. The only thing he has to care about is his friends. And Sally acts as the anchor to give us like a world and give us like a connection to all of the other characters and things like that. So when we jump to Pre-Boot, the idea is that we've defeated Eggman, we've got our kingdom back, and now we're going to watch Sally, who again has this personality of being very kind. She, in the show, she loves Tails, and Tails is a little kid in that, like a really little kid. So she like treats him like she's like he's her kid. She reads him stories. They have like a silly little like kiss on the nose thing. You get this idea of like how much she cares for people, and that's nice. That's pleasant. She has good banter with Sonic. They clearly like each other, and they feel like equals in the sense of like he can banter with her, she'll banter back. At least back then. And what I would say in terms of comedy, the comedy with Sally for me usually comes from Sonic breaking her persona and having her stoop down to his level. Again, this is kind of in the like know your place of like, well, she shouldn't be above him in the first place. But the idea is like, oh, she's this like princess and she has all this power and stuff. But Sonic just knows what buttons to push on her. And so she will stoop down to his level and be like, oh, you think like you're super cool kisser or whatever, and then I'm a big loser? Screw you, kiss me. And they'll do stuff like that. Or she'll have things where in the Pre-Boot, there'll be like a part where she's like, I really need to talk to Sonic about our relationship so that it can be all prim and proper. And then Sonic just like, bam, comes up right behind her, and she like freaks out and like drops the ring, and she's like, yeah, I didn't give you permission to spook me. He's like, yeah, as if I ever needed one. Anyway, want to go eat food? And she's like, you know. So I think Sonic, what works about their relationship in terms of comedy is unfortunately it's only Sonic who can do this. And maybe that's another problem that maybe you don't really like, is that she has a very limited set of circumstances by which you can kind of make like not make fun of her, but like get comedy at her expense.
Yeah,
but so
I'll follow that up. I'll follow that back up.
Oh, what were we gonna say?
I agree with you, but I want to follow that because that was actually what I was going to get to next. But you continue.
Oh yeah, so then what I was gonna say is, again, if Sonic and Sally to me are the main characters, then it makes sense that only Sonic is able to push her buttons, make her laugh, do all these things. But then on the other side, Sally brings out in Sonic more of his like calmer side, or just gives him something to care about, something to make him slow down a little bit and take in the world. And that's why I really love that the Countdown to Genesis story where they get rebooted to like the games. Because I had you read that, right?
Yes.
And what I love about that is that it gets rid of the kingdom, it gets rid of the big story. It's just the game of like, we got to stop Eggman. And it just puts like, if Sonic and Sally just met in like a game setting basically, and it was a little more complicated of like, we got to shut down the places or whatever, they would just look at each other and think each other's cute. They would just make funny little banters with each other. Sonic would not want to jump in water because it's like freaky, and she would take his hand and guide him down there. And once he's taken that step with someone who he feels comfortable around, then he can kick butt and he can do all that stuff. She brings out this side in Sonic that I really like. And then for him, he breaks down her persona and can kind of just like jab at her and stuff and kind of bring her down to his level in terms of like just his comedy. So all that is to say, when she steps in and takes over the plot, so to speak, of like Nicole or Tails, to me, that's just more of the other main character being important. Because whenever Sonic, fights the main bad guy, I'm not like, oh man, I wish Knuckles would step in and get to do something for once, or I wish Tails would get to deliver the final blow. Because it's Sonic's story. But to me, the world of the SatAM continuity is part Sonic, part Sally. They are the dual protagonists. So for me, whenever Sally is doing these things, it's like, oh yeah, that's the other really important character I know, stepping in to take care of people and help them out where they feel weak and building them up. Not as equals in the sense of like, why is Sally stealing screen time from Nicole? Or why is Sally stealing screen time from Tails? It's no, I see it as like, oh, she's pushing their stories forward as any good protagonist would do, dual protagonist would do. So I think it, again, same as Nicole, same as how I feel about Antoine, in terms of I have this pre-established like baseline for who these characters are in my head. And so to me, Sally is the other main character of Sonic, even though, of course, she is in no games. She is in only like a very limited story, but that is a story I very much care about because of her personality and what she allows Sonic to do, which is just stick to what he's good at, but still allow there to be a narrative structure. So again, when she's doing all these things, it's just building on that more. When she gets overwhelmed and hits Sonic, I'm like, no, Sally, you care about Sonic, but I understand that you also have the weight of the story on you. And Sonic doesn't have to deal with that because he can just fight Eggman. So when she's trying to rebuild her relationships, it feels like, oh man, it's really cool because I want her to come to this nice middle ground where she's not burdened by this responsibility. I want her to be able to just be with Sonic again. And then when you get to her being roboticized, because we have that little story, it's this time where like the world just stops and we just go back to this idea of like Sonic and Sally care about each other. They love each other. They want to be around each other, and they would rather just be going on adventures together, stop every now and then just to be together. And then their love literally transcends time and space because they realize like they should be together. And again, to anybody else who did not grow up with the SatAM story, they're just like, no, Sally, you're just like another character. But to me, I'm like, no, she's the other protagonist of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. So that's why I'm going to stop now. That's why Sally to me is a fantastic character, because to me, what you think Sonic the Hedgehog is not what Sonic the Hedgehog is. And so to me, she fits perfectly in every single thing she does in the stories that I like. In Reboot, they kind of like Flanderize her. I agree. But in terms of like when she's being her character, I'm like, perfect. Keep doing that. Keep writing the protagonist well. And then you're here on the other end. Like, what world do you exist in, Ian?
Okay, actually, no. Here's the thing. I'm actually gonna agree with you about when it comes to, especially when it comes to SatAM, because let's be honest, especially by the time we get to season 2, it's pretty much just their show. She's just everyone else is just along for the ride.
Yeah, and there's no other characters at the time. There's no Knuckles, there's no, and Tails is like, like I said, still a little kid. So there's nobody. It's just them. Right.
And when it comes to the comics, to be honest, I kind of wanted, but let's say I want to give you comics. I guess here's what I'm thinking about from my perspective, because like I said before,
when I discovered the comics, I thought, wait, they're still making SatAM? So, so to me, it's just more of SatAM.
Right. Okay, so if we're talking about in terms of SatAM, just if we're talking about continuation of that, excuse me, as a Tails fanboy, I'm still not 100% wild about that, but I think that's fair enough. But when it comes to when it comes to handling her in like IDW or handling her in like any other type of setting where there's
action in it, I agree. Do not let her exist ever again.
Well, no. I actually wasn't gonna go that far. I don't know if I ever have shown you this before, but back in like 2013, when I was like, ooh, I wonder what these 7 characters will look like together. And I was thinking about my own idea about what like Sonic group I would have in mind for like a story. Sally was one of those characters I actually brought into the story, and the idea about and bringing her into the group. But the whole idea is that it was meant to be an ensemble, not Sonic and Sally and the rest. So when it comes to the idea about that, when it comes to the idea about bringing her into the story, whether it's IDW or any other type of franchise, I think, especially after hearing your defense, there are three things that I think should be kept in mind. First off, while she should be able to contrast with Sonic, she should not be, because the thing is, how you were described, she should not be restraining his character, because, or at the very least, she should not be preventing his character from growing, and also in reverse, because like you were saying before, that Sonic does, like, Sonic, all he needs to care about is his friends, and he just needs to be free and be able to just take down Eggman, while she holds down all the serious stuff. That is honestly, like, forgetting, like, even if it was Amy, even if it was Blaze, whatever, that should be something Sonic is dealing with. Like, he should be willing to start accepting that there are. I don't want to go to the point of edginess. I would not go to the point of edge like the current Zombard arc did, but I would want to have him, like, one of the things I would want him to learn is the fact of, like, he does need to take in consideration of not just jumping in every single time, because that can cause problems later. When he's going to be a hero, he does have responsibilities and needs to think about how his actions could end up having some ramifications later. Granted, I wouldn't want to go to, like, political philosophy, like, going into, like, political ideology and all that kind of stuff, because I think that's just that just bogs down any adventure story. But more, oh hey, if I just charge in like this and drag everyone else along, everyone else who might not be as strong as me or might not be as fast as me, they could end up getting hurt, or he could end up, like, trying to attack someone, or attack someone, and that can end up having ramifications later. Basically, he does need to learn the fact that they're, like, he not necessarily the weight of the entire world, but understanding more of the consequences of what's going on around, more understanding what the consequences going on around him. And in reverse, when it comes to and for Sally in particular, while I do think it's good that Sonic was able to get her to kind of get over herself, or in your terms, bring her down to his level, I don't, especially if you're thinking about this from an ensemble, I think it's to her detriment to just have her be able to only do that with one other character, but with every other character, she has a completely fine and pleasant relationship. I think that like, every character in the story, and I'm counting Tails in this, should have characters that they get along with, but also some characters that, while they are mutually friends, or even to a certain extent can get along, they can snipe at each other and push each other's buttons. And when it comes to in particular, she shouldn't be different. And to be quite honest, I don't think Sonic's really a good fit, because while he is known to be snarky, he's not, especially as of modern, he's not to the point of, I don't want to say vindictive, but I don't really see him going to the point of overly teasing just to mess with people. He does that more just, oh yeah, I can have a little bit of fun just playing around. But when it comes to Sally, especially someone who does have a harder time while it's done in a sympathetic light, she does have a hard time kind of getting over herself. She probably should have other characters around who can do a better job of doing that, instead of having every character kind of come in and saying, like, you're the amazing Princess Sally. Like, seriously, I always heard rumors about this happening in the comics, but when I saw Mighty coming out of nowhere saying, you're the amazing Princess Sally Acorn, I bask in your... What was that? What was that?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not saying every character, like, I'm not saying everyone should go in the reverse, although to a certain extent, I think that would be a little funny, but
funnier.
Somewhat, like, she does need to have some characters around that can, outside of Sonic, who can be more vindictive or more willing to fuck with her. I think it would be funny if Knuckles could do that. I honestly think it'd be kind of, especially since I'm also kind of a fanboy of hers, I think Rouge could actually do that. I actually would think it would be kind of funny to have Rouge bounce off of her like that. And even to a certain extent, especially, and I could talk about this and we could talk about this another time, but especially for how I view Bunny, I actually think it would be kind of interesting to see them start out like that. And while they do end up becoming best friends, Bunny still has a habit of, like, okay, no, you need to get over yourself, like, right now, like, please, honey, I love you, but pull your head out of your ass, please.
Like it'd be kind of funny if that's the only time she does get sassy,
right?
Is with her friend, like her best friend, where it's like, all right, I can, Because with everybody else, it's like, oh, she kind of has like this motherly feeling about it, but maybe with Sally, it's like a sister thing, where it's like I can call you out on your bull crap when I need to. Yeah,
and it was that. Also, if she's going to be in an action series, I'm still not entirely. She needs to be someone who can function better in an action setting. Now, I know some Sally fans are getting on me for this, but if you're going to be in an action story, it makes no sense to have this one character who solely exists to just be a strategist and not have any way to participate in the fights. Because in pretty much every action series, as far as I can tell, outside of Flynn's writing, because he's an action writer who doesn't care about action, which all the problems with that. But when action series is doing a story when a story with action is using it properly, action beats are meant to act more like music, or act similar to musical numbers. They are meant to be over the top moments that are meant to give the characters moments, not only to showcase something about them, whether it's good thing or bad things, but usually gives them a moment or some type of conflict to help challenge, either to show something about them or to challenge something about them as a character. And it makes no sense to have a character who's supposed to be a main be in a story where she cannot fight. I know people want to try to write her as like, no, she's just the strategist, but it's like, yeah, but unless you're actually going to go some Machiavellian,
right, actually have strategy and not just like you do this, like, but actually like here are the battle lines, and I've like figured this out. Then
which that's not Sonic. Which a lot of reasons why that doesn't make sense, but that's not Sonic. It makes no sense to just keep her. It makes no sense to write her solely into that vein.
Makes her either makes her really hard to write, and you just need to be really good, or you're just limiting yourself, and you shouldn't do that.
Right. I know Flynn, to a certain extent, kind of agreed with me on this because he ended up giving her those sword cuffs.
Yeah.
I don't know why those bothered me. I'm trying to
think they look silly.
Huh?
I think they just kind of look silly and they lacked impact.
Yeah.
Like when Knuckles punches someone, even if it doesn't look that good, like it's still his fist, So it just there's a bit more punch to it. But with Sally, like I was never like, oh yeah, look at. I think it's also because there's no like there is an in-universe explanation for them, but there's no like tie to anything. Like again, like with like Knuckles, it's like, oh, he's tough, so he's going to punch you. With Blaze, it's like it's her elemental power. So it's just like it's coming from her.
Or Amy.
Yeah, or Amy. Like there's just like
her Pico Hammer, both cute, weirdly cute, but she can make it ironically contradictorily destructive, and it's like that really kind of works for her. But
it's visually cool to look at,
right?
But with Sally, it's just like she has lightsaber blades. And that's it. She has Wolverine lightsaber blades, and that's. And it's like, well, it could have been a lightsaber shield. It could have been this. Like, there's nothing specific of like, oh, that's Sally's thing. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So, I will say this. I do think she can be functional in the games, but she needs a lot of overhaul and someone who's willing to say, hey, Sally has problems. Sally has more problems than just weight of the world. She actually has some worldview problems that she does. She has some worldview problems that she kind of needs to start getting, that she does need to start getting over, that she needs to get over. And being willing to try to add that into the story. How that's received by some of her fans, I don't know. But I feel like that would be a better position than how she kind of is, especially how she is in the reboot. So, and she needs to be willing, and whoever the writer is, they need to be willing to take the piss. They need to be willing to throw her against characters and not have everyone fall in love with, not have everyone immediately fall in love with her, and be willing to actually not only put her in fights and give her some type of style that actually makes sense for her, but also be willing to actually make her losses mean something. Because this is something this is something I don't like about Flynn in particular, because he kind of just uses losses for the sake of just putting loss count, just putting a loss point on their record. If you're going to go ahead and have characters lose, it needs to be showing something about them. It can be as basic as they are not strong enough and they need to get better, or it's something that's meant to be them losing is meant to be some type of representation of what's a problem with their worldview. But the problem here is that, especially in the reboot, Sally ends up having several different losses, but they mean fucking nothing. Like, she ends up having that one loss in the Werehog arc where she ends up falling for Eggman's trap. But one, she doesn't really fall for Eggman's trap. She only goes along with it because everyone else votes for it, and so it's not even really hers. It's everything. She just gets more or less outvoted, and which could have been followed up if the whole idea was like, okay, no, if everyone, especially if you're going to go ahead and have that compliment the whole idea that she has to take the whole world, or she has to take all the struggles and problems of the group onto her own. It could have been a good contrast if, after that loss,
she was like, no, guys, you actually gotta like listen to me.
Huh?
If she was like, no, guys, like you actually gotta like either listen to me, you know, like, because like you said, they just kind of like were like, nah, Sally, let's just like do it. And she's like, I don't know. It's like, no, let's do it. And she's like, okay. Whereas like maybe if she had like followed her gut,
or even gone to a further degree, and she doesn't, or she just like, no, this is what we're doing. We're not up for voting anymore. Slowly going into that direction. That could be challenged too. I'm not saying that's exactly what should have happened, but something other than just her losing for the sake of just getting the Tails doll onto the ship.
Well, or I told you, like, Sonic comes in and he basically says like, because she's just like, oh, I screwed up, and it's like, yeah, and Sonic's basically just like, yeah, but the reason you screwed up is just because I wasn't there. It's like, oh, great, I'm glad everyone's worthless without you. Because that just basically tells me, it's like, don't worry, Sally, or any character. You could screw up as much as you want, because I'll just, like, if I was there, it wouldn't matter anyway. Because I would have fixed it. So it's like, oh, good, I'm glad.
So that is so we have that problem, and so that was also an issue, and I already told you, like, okay, I'll talk about that later, but So when it comes to the 5 overall, it's really just more like 3 of them kind of make any kind of sense. Only 2 of them really makes even remote kind of an argument to bring them into the cast. And even then, it's like, okay, do we need to have these 2 other characters? And especially with Sally, who you kind of have to have the kingdom,
She is the most into the setting in the story.
Yeah, she's gonna have, like, everyone else, every other character, while they kind of have backgrounds, they're not going to be overtly effective to whatever's going on in the story. But with Sally, she's a princess, so you have to reference and have the kingdom in there to some degree.
Yeah, if you wanted her to be a like if Sega ever actually wanted to have world building in Sonic, I'd be perfectly fine if she was just like a side character for a game. Like, we go to the Acorn Kingdom and we deal with that. And she's like, you know, she's not Sonic. She is Princess Sally. She actually runs her thing. We can even go to Blaze World, just consolidate Blaze and put her in our world, in Sonic's world or whatever. But just like the idea of like, she could be in the story, but I just don't think she has any place. If we're gonna have like the games, and if we're gonna do kind of have more Sonic in it, I don't think she fits anywhere as like a central character. If that makes sense. I have no problem with her being like an important character. I just don't think she kind of fits as a central character, because like you said, she's very tied to story. So if you had a game that had a focus of the story and you wanted her to be in it for just that, then I think that would be fine. And you could even bullcrap it and just say like, oh yeah, Game Sonic's always known Sally. They go way back, but you know, Sally had to watch her kingdom and Sonic goes on adventures all the time. So it's like, oh, we're old friends. If you want to do that, fine. But I just don't think she has any permanent value to the group, because for all the reasons you've said, where it's just so hard and she's so limited, it just kind of doesn't work.
Yeah.
She's very
out of the 5, we can only really argue for Bunny.
Yeah, Bunny and a fun AI for we're gonna steal Oma Chow's job and give it to Nicole.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I kind of want that more than even Bunny being in the game.
Actually, me too. I actually think that would be funnier to see. I actually think that would be more enjoyable. That's the word.
It would genuinely give every Sonic game this like personality to it of like the menus and stuff are in universe, and that's always fun. People love that kind of stuff. So yeah. All right. So finally, you just want to talk about them as like a group, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which we kind of go over a little bit of that throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. But basically, just to summarize it here, especially if we end up cutting this up into parts, I be honest, they don't have good chemistry with each other.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think they've ever had good chemistry with each other. I think everybody has, the only characters who have any chemistry are Sally and Nicole and Bunny. So Sally is like that. Sonic has chemistry with everybody just by nature of his personality. Like he can just bounce off any character. But as far as like each other, like I don't know what Antoine and Rotor are gonna do together. I don't know if Antoine and Sally got together as like a dynamic, it would just be he causes problems and she gets annoyed, which wouldn't be fun. Sally and Bunny, they don't, like you said, they don't have enough of a back and forth for there to ever be any conflict. So you would have to add a new character to be the conflict. So their dynamic is just fairly safe. So yeah, just like my opinion on it is I'm probably going to 100% agree with you. They're just kind of a bad as an ensemble team. Like if you're ever going to be like, oh man, the Freedom Fighters, like it's more I like them as individuals and their individual stories. But like if I'm to be like, oh yeah, it's like a group, I'm like, what dynamic do they have? So
yeah, no, I agree. It's just kind of a shame because it's like these guys are or especially if you end up talking to a lot of the fans, it's like these guys are meant to be like a unit, huh?
They're like thick as thieves. People think.
Yeah, but if you try putting them in story especially without really doing any type of rewriting for any of the characters, it's like, what can you do with it? Like there's like Rotor doesn't interact with anyone. Rotor doesn't have chemistry, doesn't have any type of interaction or personality or any type of potential chemistry with anybody.
Yeah.
Bunny and Antoine, as much as I can agree with you that they are at the very least cute in the pre-boot, their relationship more or less kind of boils down to they give each other doting looks and say that they're there for each other, which I have my own problems with that, but it really boils down to that should really my personal thing is that should kind of be a default platonic thing for a group for a group like this, is that they all do genuinely care for each other. So it's like there should really be
more that we've seen where they've genuinely been there for. So it's like, oh, there's actually like if they say I'm there for you, you're like, yeah, like when this specific thing happened. But I agree, in the moment, as like a moment to moment thing, it could be a little weak.
Yeah. And then Antoine doesn't have chemistry with anybody else.
I guess. Well, I already said Sonic. Never mind.
No, I'm talking about these five.
Yeah. My bad.
But let's say we just look. But even if you look at them individually, even if you look at them individually and just bring them into the story and just think about, okay, ignoring their own arcs, ignoring their backgrounds or any type of rewriting that you have to do for them, or just think about the general personality that you're probably going to have to stick with for them. How would they interact with it? How would they bounce off of the characters that already exist? I can't see anyone besides maybe Cream. And to be honest, I think it would be funny if even she had her patience. If she lost her patience, I could see everyone wanting to knock Antoine upside the head at one point. Yeah. Rotor is just kind of.
No one would have any opinion on him other than maybe Tails. Tails would be like, "That's a cool thing you built. Like that's a thing." But
yeah, Sally, I think it would be best if some of the more snarkier characters could do a good job at pushing her buttons. But
she'd be good with Rouge,
especially with Rouge.
She'd be good with Rouge. I think she'd be. Well, this is just kind of Shadow in a nutshell, but I think Shadow's pretty good with any character who's self-serious, because then they're just kind of like out self-seriousing each other in a way, where it's just like, So I'm just like, I don't know, maybe Shadow would be fun.
No, I agree with you on that.
But that's just kind of Shadow in a nutshell, So it's not necessarily anything Sally would bring to the table.
Yeah. Bunny, I don't really see. Bunny
has rule of cool, so I think that's just what it would boil down.
Okay, And okay, so we already just kind of.
I mean, you're talking about like meaningful relationships. I'm just talking about like integrating them into the story. Like I've already said, Bunny would, or not the story, just the franchise. I think
Yeah.
Bunny just would work as like a rule of cool, like Omega character. But in terms of like telling actual stories, I agree. There's not much.
Yeah.
Unless we're going to give her that sass, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I get you.
So yeah, I guess to kind of wrap it up, to try to start back from where we initially started. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people not only online, but especially in certain Discord servers that I'm in, that they are just like, we really want we really want the freedom fighters back. We really want them. And while I am completely sympathetic to that view, because I'm like, if I grew up with characters like this, I didn't want, and they were in this weird kind of gray zone about if they would ever be referenced or brought back into the franchise again, or just completely disappear.
Yeah.
I sympathize with that. But unless you have someone who can do a good job of rewriting them, which I think is safe to say the current
Pontiac and Graf aren't going to do it.
well, they're gone. They actually put up on the resumes that they're officially done with the franchise.
Oh, good. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And also for my good thing, or at least it's a step in the right direction. Flynn seems to be. I really like. Okay, one, to come back to my original point, Flynn would not do a good job at it. See everything in the reboot for fair comparison. Which side note, I kind of hope he's kind of finding a way to leave too. Like, even ignoring my problems with him, I'm like, I could not, if I was ever a creative, I would never want to stay on a project for 10, unless it was meant to be my pet project, where
you're constantly evolving it, and you're constantly like, you can choose when you want to make it different.
Yeah, I would never want to stay on a creative project for more than 10 years. So I'm like, no. So if this is
especially when all of your hard work has systematically been destroyed from existence twice.
Totally. That I do kind of, to a certain extent, have sympathy for him. But I kind of hope he's leaving, but he couldn't do it. I'm not sure about Stanley. I know
it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm gonna just wait and see about that. But as is, unless someone can come in and do some really good rewriting for, at the very least, 2.5 of them, I don't see it really being beneficial or necessary to bring these guys into the story. So
I think we need like an actual like show writer, like someone who is written for like an ensemble cast, because with Flynn, he was literally just like he says it himself, like he went to college, he got an English degree, and he's like, what should I do with this? And so he just spammed Archie, Sonic, sending them unsolicited scripts, and then they were just like, well, we're getting rid of Ken Penders, this guy wants a job, doesn't look too bad, and now he's here. And then as far as Pontiac and Graf, they just write like comedy, right? Just like lowbrow comedy, like they did like Happy Tree Friends, right?
Yep.
Which is just like, we torture the cute animal, isn't it funny? And it's funny the first time, and then they just do the same joke. So we need like actual storytellers, who have like kind of like this is their craft. Whereas like Flynn is like, he's like cobbled together, like his style, but I don't think like he was trained in writing stories.
Nor did he really feel the need to learn to get better. Because even if for the points I can give for him in the preboot,
he was already building off someone else's stuff.
Yeah. If he's not being guided by the hand and told what to do, he is awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there could be hope. I mean, like literally, all you would have to do is get someone who can just like write a good ensemble cast, and they could probably do anything. But yeah, maybe we'll get Aaliyah Baker to do it. She's the one who she's the one who's like, whoa, wait a second. Because I was reading Spark of Life last night, and I was like, whoa, we're actually like making the setting we're in feel lived in, because like characters are like interacting in their environment. We know where this pond is. We know that there's this car. There's the computer refrigerator. Like it, we're having like world humor, and that's what I think more Sonic comedy needs to be. Is situational.
Also she's just better with handling them. Like, I didn't send you this one, but it was like the one issue where Bunny was not just dumping exposition or just completely pointless. it was when like when she and Sally were going up, were dealing with the Deer Sisters. I have a bunch of problems with the Deer Sisters because again, people trying to make villains seem to basically make villains who are essentially helping with an authoritarian dictator seem sympathetic, and that's a whole other conversation. But at least when it came to Aaliyah Baker's writing for Bunny and Sally, they actually seemed like characters and not just people who were there to move the plot forward and dump exposition like Flynn did.
Yep, because that story is one of my favorites in Reboot. Like especially like the Bunny part, where it's like her interacting with Clove and like relating to her and being like, well, you worked for Eggman, but I'm not. And, you know, like you want to have these parts, but you know, like there was actual conflict and like thematic like relevance to like everything that was happening. It was like, whoa, storytelling. Holy. Oh. But yeah. No, I agree. So maybe let's give her a job. Here's the thing. I think at the very least she would give the characters like good banter.
Oh yeah, better banter at least.
And like for example, if she wrote like Sonic Generations, you know, like those little scenes where the characters would like talk about the games and stuff afterwards for like 2 levels. She would probably have written like really good stuff for like all of those things and been like, well, if we're in this level, let's have the characters interact with this thing, or let's have this funny little thing where like we kind of like jab at the fact that like when we go to Christ City, we're like, I don't remember that place. What was that? You know, just stuff like that. So I guess she's the only writer that I can think of that's written for Sonic that as far as like telling like stories, because I know like the Boom writers, they're good at comedy. I agree. But I think she could probably do a good job putting all the cast together. But yeah, man, I can't believe that we were like, yeah, let's try not to go for 3 hours, and we still.
I told you.
Like, here's the thing: wasn't the last one only 2.5 hours? So we did it again.
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't the last one 2.5 hours?
I think that one honestly went to close to 3.
Okay. Well, either way, we did it again. I'm glad we care so much.
Yeah. Well, okay. At least this time we have it better segmented. So if you upload this, you can like upload it in chunks, so people don't go like, "What?"
Yeah, exactly. No. Okay. Never mind. We're not even close to the IDW one was 3 hours and 24 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, we're under by an hour. We're under by an hour and 5 minutes.
Right. So do you got any closing thoughts?
Either rewrite them or them's the breaks.
Yeah, rewrite them or them's the breaks. They are very situational and very they are not constructed in a way that would probably fit very well in the first place, and they have very hard times even in their own stories. So they're just kind of fundamentally disjointed characters, I will say. Not broken, but very like disjointed. So yeah, and overall, like I said, you know, if you get anything from this, I'm definitely going to clip my Sally rant because I've never been more sure about how I feel about her character. I did that. I was like, whoa, everything I've ever felt about the character, I finally put it into words. Hooray, I did it.
Good for you, because I'm still kind of, I know, boring. To a certain extent, I think I kind of hit it for me too, but it's really just the fact of she's boring. I mean, like, not boring. She doesn't have much to real. I'm gonna be honest. It's mainly because 1, I find her boring. 2, she doesn't. Consistently her writers are in love with her and constantly need you to know as a fan that she is the most humble character in the group, which just makes her come off obnoxious, even though she's honestly fine at the end of the day. And she just has a bad habit of undercutting other character stories. But
did my rant make any sense?
Oh no, your rant made perfect sense. I gotta be honest, actually. If it helped anything, you actually gave me a better insight into what actually can make her functional. Because in that viewpoint about her as like the deuteragonist or someone that's meant to be like just as much of a protagonist as Sonic is, that makes all the sense in the world. My thing is more, I kind of came in, I have a weird experience when it comes to my conclusion with Sonic, because I came in with Sonic Underground. My first game was Sonic Advance or Sonic Riders. And like my first show was Sonic Underground. My first games were like Sonic Advance and Sonic Riders. So I'm thinking about the franchise less as a show about two characters and more about a story about different characters bouncing off of and working off of one another.
Yeah, definitely.
So like when you're describing Sonic like that, it's like when she's meant to be the only character that Sonic is bouncing off of, that makes all the sense in the world. When you also have to consider the fact that at the bare minimum, Tails, Amy, and Knuckles need to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like I said, it's Sonic for you. Nothing makes sense. So whatever.
It's kind of the thing. It's just like Sonic's gone through like
Sonic's just
has had just as much.
Guy.
Huh?
Poor guy just can't catch a break. He can't have anything consistent.
No, but to be fair, that's kind of what makes the franchise fun. Is that it's just
yeah, definitely. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, no, it's all for. Well, I would change some things, but I wouldn't get rid of anything.
I wouldn't change the heart of it.
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't change the heart of the franchise. I would not say make him into like a consistent Mario. Like I'm okay with all the I'm okay with shooting every, shot from every line that you want. It's just unfortunate that recently they've all been stinkers. So it's just been frustrating. But yeah. No.
Well, yeah.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was agreeing with you with the games. It was I was thinking more, what would I change in particular? Because I'm thinking more from the shows and the games. Because like I've like in the last 3 years, I finally started playing console games, so I'm still kind of getting used to that. So I'm thinking more from like a story and writing perspective. And the one thing I know I would change, without question, not that I would get rid of Sonic Underground, but I would not have it have a fucking song every episode.
In every episode.
Yes. Every episode it had those three singing. It had Jaleel White. Well, no, it didn't have Jaleel White, but it had three singers who weren't that great singing songs every episode.
Yeah, I know. I need to watch it. I'm excited.
Oh God.
All right. Well, we've gone off the rails. And overall, definitely think that was a really good discussion. Thank you so much for coming again. We need to do this just with other stuff too.
Oh, totally. We should do a Sonic Underground.
With what?
Sonic Underground.
Yeah. Ugh. When was the last time you watched it?
Ooh, I want to say 2013.
Okay. Yeah, we might need to both rewatch or watch it or whatever. But yeah, no. We should definitely do more stuff like this. And even if it's not Sonic related, maybe we could talk about One Piece or something. I don't know. But yeah, no. Thanks for coming, dude.
All right. Glad you invited me. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Oh, do you want to plug anything before we go?
I am on Twitter. I am on Tumblr. I am on YouTube and probably other platforms, but I'm at least on those three. So follow me there. I'll at Lavia Ray.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye.
Bye.
You don't actually have to